Welcome to another edition of ECAC Hockey Decisions Makers. Thrilled to be joined by legendary Cornell coach Mike Schafer. Coach, great to see you. How's everything going?
Going good. Going good. Getting down there, the fun part of the year, the stretch drive. So really looking forward to the last couple of weeks here in playoffs.
I got to ask you, it's your last year being the head coach at Cornell. I'm sure you're not done with hockey. Can you talk us through what led to this decision for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think running a Division I program, it takes a tremendous amount of energy. I think that, if you want to be successful, you got to have, really you got to build a lot of relationships in so many different areas. You got to build relationships, most importantly, with your players on your team, your staff. Then it carries over to the institution and your athletic department, your AD, your associate AD, and then you mix in your donors and boosters, which is pretty prevalent at an Ivy League school, raising money, and then throw in the most important part, recruiting and developing those critical relationships with agents and coaches and players and mums and dads and agents again and agents again. It came to a point in time where I knew it was time. In the fact that not that I didn't want to change because of the coaching. I love coaching. It wasn't because of the portal or the NIL or any of that. I just the amount of energy and grind it takes on your body, if you want to do it right, was I knew it was time for me, and I knew it was time to turn that over to someone else and make sure that our institution and our players, they get what they should get out of a head coach. And that's what I think I've done for 30 years is be all in and all facets of the program, and it takes an awful lot. And for me now at 62, I want to be able to share that energy with my own family and my own friends and have my own experiences on a Friday and Saturday night. And, I've given everything I can to Cornell and to college hockey and hockey in general. So it's time to move on, and don't know where it takes, but it definitely, that's what all led to those decisions. What definitely wasn't the coaching. I love to coach.
Well, you did a heck of a job with it for a long time, Mike. You were always an unbelievably fierce competitor. Can you talk about what's changed the most since you started as a player at Cornell to where the game is now at the college level?
Yeah, I mean, I think the game now, and I think the players had much more hockey sense in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And I think that because of that, it was because you're able to hook, grab, slash, hit from behind. And you better be ready to move the puck. You better be able to use your teammates quick. Just because if you didn't, you're going to take it across the hands, or you're going to get from behind. And the game has evolved into I think faster game, but I wouldn't necessarily say that a faster game, more skilled game as individuals. And so that's I think the biggest difference with players. I think the team concept is so much more evolved. With regards to team defense and how different teams play. And, there's lots of teams that are like, well, this team plays a 1-1-3. Well, you know what? There was teams in the 70s playing a 1-1-3 or a 1-2-2 or a 2-1-2. I just think how teams are so committed to it from top to bottom and committed offensively, a team offensive game. It's incredible to see the evolving part of the game. And that's probably the biggest part. A lot less physical, physical intimidation I think is pretty much out of the game now. But it's more of a speed, high pace, and intensity that is the intimidating factor.
Well, because this is probably going to be your last show with us, we have a little surprise for you. We're going to take a little walk down memory lane for you. So one of the first memories we're going to have is your most recent assistant, Ben Sire. Coach Sire from Princeton University, why don't you join on and give us your best Mike Schafer story? He's coming. Don't worry, Mike. There he is. Hey, Ben, welcome aboard.
Hey, Pierre, how are you?
I'm good. Can you give us a good Mike Schafer story?
No, I got more than one. I just don't know how many I can share on air here, though. So, but how are you, Schafe?
I'm good, Benny. How you doing, my friend?
Good. I think that this was a taste of Pierre how competitive I knew Schafe was early on. We used to when I first started working for him the first summer, we would run at lunch, and We went out for a little jog. There was 4 or 5 of us, Topher Scott, Sean Schmidt. I think Ed Kelly was with us too, a trainer, and went for a little jog. And we had been into this for a couple of weeks, and both Schmitty and I, we got a little bit of a gallop going on at the end, and started to push each other a little bit, and we took off from the pack and we got going, and we had a little race at the end, and where we would finish, we'd have to go by a couple other athletic buildings before we got to Lina. And so we left the other guys a little bit in the dust here because we were battling. Well, for the rest of the afternoon, Schafe didn't talk to us because he was so choked that we took off on him. He goes, "There's a staff rule. We start together and we finish together, no matter how we do it." So it always stuck with me there that after that, and I don't think Schmitty and I took off after that. We might only had one day where we actually had to jump on the pack, but it certainly stuck with me.
You know, Ben, I had the privilege of recruiting against Mike and coaching against Mike. We were both assistants. So I have some good stories too. But I'm curious, what was it like to stand on the bench next to Mike?
Well, I think because I spent 2/3 of my time with my left ear closest to him. I'm slightly deaf in the left ear. He'd always come down and be like, "What's that kid thinking?" And I'd turn around and I'd be like, I don't know. I can't always think for him, you know. And so my left ear is a little deaf, but there was certainly always a lot of passion here, and it was constant chatter here and constant coaching that was always going on. So it was always. Not only was it fun, but you were always on your toes and looking how we could make different adjustments here to help the team.
One of the things I really admired about Mike, and I don't know if you learned that from Louis Raycroft, coach, or if you learned it from Brian McCutcheon, or you learned it from Billy Wilkinson, but I always found that you were able to delegate really well. Is that true, Ben? Was he a good delegator?
Yeah, he did but he would check in with you all the time too, and so he would give you tasks, and he didn't micromanage by any stretch of the imagination, but he would check in so you knew that the task that you were delegated with had a great deal of importance, no matter what it was. Obviously, if you're running a power play or a penalty kill or some type of system, you know that there's value, but there's other tasks that go on as well, and maybe not seen as important. But he'd always check in and make sure that the task that you were delegated with was always being completed.
What's the one characteristic that you learned from Mike Schafer that you've brought down to Princeton University?
I think that every detail matters on a day in and day out basis in terms of how your culture is established, how that standard is achieved, and that there's no drill, there's no workout, there's no meeting that isn't less important or more important. Every interaction is important to establish, the culture and the standard that you want to establish.
Coach Sire, thank you so much for your time. I know you can hang around the waiting room and hear some of these other stories coming up. Coach Schafer, we've got some other guys.
Yeah, before you go though, Benny, I mean, Pierre, I was scrolling through some pictures the other day. One of my proudest moments as a coach is last year seeing Benny hold the ECAC championship trophy. I've got it on my phone, and I was just scrolling through the other day. To see the smile on his face, Benny committed himself so much to Cornell hockey, over the years, and to be rewarded with that championship is one of the proudest moments I have as a coach. And to see a staff that struggles, goes through all the ups and downs. I've always been very appreciative of my assistant coaches. They're the ones that make you. And Benny's been a hell of a coach, and he's going to be a hell of a head coach. And I owe him a lot. And so it's also stories about him that I don't have time to share, but I don't have many. He's a great guy. Does an awesome job.
Well, that is tremendous, and thank you for doing that, Coach Sire. Hope you can hang around and hear some of the other tributes we have for Coach Schafer.
Sounds good. We'll do.
Our next guest, I'm really proud and excited to introduce him, Brent Brecky, who played at Western Michigan University when Mike was an assistant coach there, and eventually now coaches against him, and he was a longtime assistant for Coach Schafer as well. Coach Brecky, welcome aboard. Go get her.
So the older coach is a little more technically challenged, Pierre. So, you notice how Benny was able to get on right away, but Brent, he's dialing up something up there. And
I'm wondering if that road trip he could
he might actually be at the St. Lawrence Inn. So
there he is. Coach, good to see you. What's your favorite Mike Schafer story? Is it Western Michigan or Ithaca related?
I want to try to mute him right now, please, if we could. I don't know. I tell you what, I would say probably an Ithaca one for sure.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, so this goes back. I'm trying to remember. It was the graduating class. Danny Powell would have been. It was one of my first couple of years, and Schaaf would always host the seniors for dinner at the end of the season over at his house. And so they came over, and basically, I don't know how the conversation got started, but basically they challenged him to run a marathon. And this was back in Schaaf's younger days when he was, I'll say he was a connoisseur of chicken wings at that time. That was probably a staple of his diet. So the senior class challenged him and put some wagers down that he couldn't run a marathon. And by the end of the night, he was fully committed to prove him wrong. And so he made the decision to run a marathon. Well, now the training had to start. And so we ended up committing to do it as a group. Ed Kelly, who's still there as a trainer, Ed's original parts with Schaaf. I think they came in the same time, right? Schaaf, didn't you guys come in the same?
Yep, 29 years. Yeah.
And so Eddie jumped on board to train for it as well. And so long and, I'll shorten the story. But anyway, we had a lengthy training run. It was a 12-mile or 14 run, and it was like 90-some degrees in the morning. And so we went out and we're running. We started early, but all of a sudden mid-morning it had gone up to 95 degrees. And Schaaf is turning just salt on his face, and he's like, "Hey, I gotta walk here. Like I'm not feeling great right now, but you guys go ahead and finish." And we're like, "No, we'll stay." Well, Ed, our trainer, says, "Are you sure?" And Schaaf's like, "I'm good. I'll meet you guys back at the rink. Just you guys can keep going ahead." Well, Schaaf ends up passing out under a tree on the run. And so we're back at the rink, and we're there, and he should have been there probably within, 15 minutes after we got to the rink, and we're waiting, and he stumbles into the rink, and he is covered in salt. And I mean, layers and layers of salt. He had stopped sweating, like he was bone dry on the outside. The sweat was completely gone, turned into salt, and he walks into the locker room and essentially collapses on the floor. And so we're packing him in ice bags, and like it's almost a little bit of a medical emergency. Ends the longer short, he ends up being fine, but it was one of those where he was like sleeping like Rip Van Winkle below a tree, and we kind of left him in the dust, unfortunately. But again, that was the professional trainer's opinion that he was going to be okay by himself. So I leave it at that.
Coach, you had a chance to not just play for Coach Schafer, you also worked with him. What was it like when he was an assistant coach at Western Michigan when you were a young player there?
Well, I don't think it's ever changed from the time he started coaching. Just the competitiveness has always been there. Highly intense and wanting to win, and everything he does. I mean, that was some of our staff parties at the holidays. We'd have all of the wives together, and it would be wives versus coaches, and we'd play board games, and it was a battle to the end. So those were the yearly things. But the compete is the one thing that's always been a piece of who Schaaf is, and which I have the utmost respect for. So as a player, it was something that that was who I was. I enjoyed that part of it, and playing for him and that type of a guy that had that same mentality was awesome. And then coach alongside, so it was pretty special.
What was it like to stand on the bench next to him at line or rink?
Well, we used to keep tabs how many times he'd break his hand on the glass or a board. So he had a medical punch card. So after the fifth surgery, the sixth one was free. So highly intense on the bench. There was usually, and Benny can appreciate this, if you're running the defenseman and the D are playing well and they make a mistake, he's coming down the bench saying, "What in the hell are they doing down here?" So it was like, I don't have the remote control this time. It's decisions they're making. We'll try to change it.
Coach Schafer, you got anything you want to say to Coach Brecky before he goes?
Yeah, I'm going to try to change that habit this weekend. It's been a long time. Obviously, I do it now. Same with Benny and Brent, both, right? Brent was, one of my first hires, along with Jamie Russell, and like Benny did, we had some tough times. We grinded it out, and he was with us and won some championships. And I've just been very, very grateful. You got both these guys on here. Everybody asks me what's the hardest thing. The hardest thing is hiring great assistant coaches that are loyal. They're intense. They're smart. They're take initiative, and both these guys have been that their whole career. And it's no mistake that they're head coaches, and they're both very successful. And so I've been blessed with a lot of guys that have done a lot of great work, and a lot of it is because of them. They're the ones that bring the culture and the guys to the campus, and without them, you can kind of flounder as a coach. And both of them did an unbelievable job.
Well, one of the things, we've had two coaches on now. Now we're going to bring a former Cornell player on who plays in the National Hockey League, originally drafted by the New York Rangers, a power forward when he played for you guys at Liner Rink. Current member of the best team in the National Hockey League right now, the Winnipeg Jets, Morgan Barron. Morgan, welcome aboard.
Hey, Pierre, you got me?
I have you loud and clear. Great to have you on board. Are you up in Winnipeg right now?
I am in Winnipeg, just dealing with the cold.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is it similar to Ithaca, or is it a little colder up there?
She gets a little bit colder, but it all feels the same once you get into -10, -20. So,
Morgan, what's your favorite Mike Schafer story as a player?
Oh boy, God, I think when I think about Schafe, first word that kind of comes to me is intensity, and I remember vividly doing battle drills with him, and I don't think he was quite thrilled about the way things were going, and he kind of skated by, gave us the old stare down, and then a few minutes later, his stick snapped over the crossbar. So, it was the drill obviously picked up from there, but I think that was very much on par with, Shafe's intensity and kind of the high expectations he had for his players, but also fair. I think it was a moment that kind of we needed to be called out for. And, I look back on that and it's obviously a funny Shafe moment at the time, but, that's kind of the passion he brought to the rink every day.
One of the cool things about being a player or a coach is you get to be in an environment like a dressing room before a big moment in a game. Can you take us inside the dressing room, whether it be at Lina or whether it be at an ECAC championship venue, and Mike Schafer's giving you the last talk before you go on the ice? What's that like?
Yeah, it's special. I think Schafe is, I think the way he prepares for the game is taught me what to expect in the NHL, what to expect at the next level. I think, the preparation all the way up to the moments before the game is, it's an A+. It's what you expect. And then, Schafe can talk. He's a great speaker. I think, some of the motivation, the things like that come out, it really gets the guys going. And, I think back of, before heading out for, I think it was, one of our tournament games there, my sophomore year, he said, let's not dip our toe in the water. We're going to jump in here. Like, we're diving in head first. And, that's something that, I don't even know if you remember saying that. That may have been, a half-hazardous comment, but, here I am 5 years later. And I think in my life, off the ice and in hockey, if I'm struggling or I feel like my game's not going the right way, that's kind of a moment in a quote that I come back to a lot. And I really do think about often.
Mike, when you hear that from one of your former players who's actually thriving in the National Hockey League, how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes you. Every coach loves, the Morgan Barron story. I mean, it's and when you have athletes that achieve the highest level that get to the NHL, and I think that every Morgan Barron story, there's a Noah Ball story. As someone else who's that goes and has those high achievements on Wall Street, or the Matt McRae, Mark McRae, or Ryan Smart story that end up being doctors. And so in the hockey world, you love the Morgan Barron story, right? I mean, that's exactly what all the guys come to Cornell for. They want to be a pro. But it's Morgan won't know this, but I just actually listened to the team song that these guys came up with in 2020 by Jeff Malott and Liam Motley. And it really brought me back to what it really means to be a Cornell hockey player. And so Morgan makes me extremely proud, because it's one of the hardest professions to achieve, play in the NHL. I don't know if there's any harder, but man, it's just as hard to be a doctor. It'd be to be a big time surgeon. It requires exactly what Morgan has, a drive and intensity. And don't kid yourself, he has natural talent, but his attention to detail, Benny can tell you the amount of hours he put in the morning, getting on the ice early and paying attention to everything he did. is why he's where he's at. You know, as coaches, we bring it up to a lot of players, but few embrace it like Morgan does and other guys that get to that level. And you always tell guys in your team, you know, there seems to be a real common thread of those guys who get to the NHL. They're really freaking driven, and they really take care of the details, and they push themselves beyond what coaching is. And so, yeah, I'm extremely proud of Morgan, but you know what? His character and his intensity is what got him where he is today.
Well, that's really well said, Coach Morgan. We can't thank you enough for joining us. I enjoy watching your team play all the time. Please give my best to Coach Arneal and the rest of your staff up there, and try not to get any frostbite. The only good news is the Palomino Club's still not open, and you can't go there anymore. That's the only good news for you.
You know, I haven't been. I've heard about the old booty shake Mondays, I think is what they call Palomino. So,
there you go. Thank you, Morgan. Thanks for joining us. Stay on board if you want, because the next guest is amazing. 3-time Stanley Cup winner, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 2002 Olympic gold in Salt Lake City. I had the privilege of being there for that. I can't say enough good things about Joe Nieuwendyk. He's arguably one of the best college players of all time, and over the last 25 years has to be considered one of the best NHL players of all time. So it's my great pleasure to welcome former Mike Schafer teammate Joe Nieuwendyk to the Mike Schafer Show. Let's call it that. Welcome aboard, Joe. He's coming.
I'm there, Pierre. Can you see me?
We don't see you, Joe, but that's okay. They didn't teach that.
I think I'm there now.
Good to see you, Joe.
I see you now. Can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. What's your favorite Mike Schafer teammate story?
Well, there's some that I could probably not share on this telecast. However, you know, I don't know. I can poke fun at him, but that'll come at a later time. I was thinking to myself, Pierre, it's 40 years since him and I were roaming that campus together. 40 years. And I think I knew early on that, you know, the leader that Schaaf was. I had a tough time early on when I first got to campus, but he was one of the guys that kind of took me under his wing a little bit, made me feel more comfortable. And then when we started playing hockey, I could see right away the leadership of Schaaf. You know, we like to kid him a little bit that he was almost coaching, part-time coach under Lou Raycroft while he was playing, you know, making decisions on power play and things like that. But it was clear to all of us from that mid-'80s teams that he was a leader and our captain for a reason.
Hey, Joe, one of the iconic thoughts about Mike Schafer is the Harvard-Cornell series and how intense it was. Can you give us some Mike Schafer moments from the Harvard-Cornell perspective when you were playing them?
Well, I miss the biggest moment and the Schafer kill moment where he broke his stick over his head, facing down the Harvard Crimson on their blue line. I wasn't there for that one, but the legend lives to this day. But you know, those games we played against Harvard were so intense. You know, I compare it to the rivalries I've had in the NHL too, whether it's the Devils and the Rangers, the Flames and the Oilers. I mean, you know, it's a smaller scale, but still the rivalry was there every year. And those particular years with the team that they had, Scott Fusco and some of those players, they had a real high caliber team. And for us, those were the games we always circled on our calendar, and Schaaf made sure that we were always ready for those ones. He took a lot of those games to heart. And I know even as a coach, so in the last 3 decades, those are the games I'm sure he's always circled on his schedule as well, coaching.
Joe, I know how many great coaches you've played for over the course of your career, whether it was internationally or whether it was in the National Hockey League winning Stanley Cups. When did you know that Mike Schafer had a chance to be a really good coach, and why?
I think it was clear, like I said earlier, Pierre, that when we were playing, I don't think Mike knew at that time, or us as players knew, that he was going to get into coaching. But the evolution was pretty seamless for him. Like I said, he was already kind of making decisions and directing traffic while he was playing. So he had coaching qualities in him, and that carried over for him right after. I know he went to Western Michigan for a stint, but for him to come back to Cornell and done what he's done for the past 3 decades, I think coaching was his destiny.
Mike, that's pretty high praise from somebody that's one of the iconic figures in the National Hockey League over the last 30 years. What's your response to that? Hold on, Mike. We don't hear
I
you.
had to unmute myself. He's that skinny little freshman that rolled in back in 84. That man, was he good? Like he doesn't realize, but we realize how good he was right off the bat when he walked in. And but Joe is. It's funny. I just talking to Mike Richter how humble Joe is and how humble Mike Richter. Someone came up with a picture of Mike Richter saying, "Is Colin Hellebuyck the best goaltender ever?" Now I text Mike Richter and said, "People forget the Canada Cup back when you stood on your head and took the series from the Canadians." But Joe's been there from the start. As an alumni, I had the privilege of him walking in my first year coaching, and he was in an arbitration. And he walked in, and to have him around to vouch for me, I thought was huge back in '95 for guys. And just being around the team gave me that comfort. It was kind of a seamless transition. But when you walk in, as Ben's going through it and Brent's been it, when you go that first year as a head coach, there's a lot of stuff happening. And the fact that, one of my best friends was right by my side, someone that everybody in the team looked up to, was awesome. And I will tell you Joe Newnick's story then. It was kind of funny because the players, Joey was skating with, he was nursing it back a little bit, and he was coming out, and he was just kind of cruising a little bit. And we did a little 3-puck shootout. Morgan remembers once in a while, you have to score 3 goals. And, the boys were kind of like, yeah, Joey's good, but how good is he? And I was like, told Joe, I said, why don't you, the next shootout, why don't you crank it up a little bit? And I think he scored 3 on Jason Elliott, who was our MVP, and ripped it by him and Jean-Marc Peltier. And the boys knew right away that not many were going to be playing pro hockey in the future. So but he's been a great friend. He's been there all along. As someone I continue to, as a mentor, reach out to when things are tough, and always give him a call, and he's always able to help out.
Thanks for sharing that, Mike. Let's go around the horn. Ben, what's your last departing message to Coach Schafer as we wrap this up?
I think just to enjoy the last moments is he's all about the team, the camaraderie, whether it's with the players and the staff, enjoying a coffee before the game and just soak it all in as things kind of wind down.
Coach Brecky, I know you're going to be there on Saturday night. I was staring down at Coach Schafer.
Well, is he eligible or is he suspended? I got to find this out. Anything I'm not aware of? Are you on the bench this weekend?
Never know. There's one game between there and now and then.
No, we're looking forward to it. My wife Stacy's making the trip down to be a part of it. Obviously, a special night. We can't thank. He's been a huge impact in our life. We can't thank him enough for not just from the professional side, from a coaching aspect, but from a family standpoint. All he's done for my wife, my kids as well. So thanks, Schafe. Enjoy the night.
Hey, Morgan, I got 2 things to ask you. One, you're listening to Joe Nieuwendyk wax eloquently about being a Cornell hockey player and playing with, and you're watching Mike Schafer. What does it mean to you when you walked into the same dress room as Joe Nieuwendyk at Cornell?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, you obviously see the legacy he's left there, and to hear him and Schafe, obviously he held back a little bit on Schafe there, but to hear the stories they shared together, I think that's what Cornell hockey is all about. I was reflecting earlier on kind of what's been most special to me about going to Cornell, and I think it's the relationships I've made, obviously with the coaches, but also with my teammates. All my best friends in life are my classmates. I was laughing. Austin McGrath, one of our goalies there, who was in my class, got married last summer in Lloydminster, the middle of Alberta and Saskatchewan, and all 10 of my classmates were there. Like, nobody even hesitated about missing it. And already guys in my class are texting about where we're meeting up this summer. So to see those two go back and forth and to hear about them keeping in touch, I think it speaks volumes to the program, and I can kind of draw a lot of similarities to where I hope I'll be in 30 years.
Can you do you have any final wishes for Coach Schafer as he goes into his last regular season weekend?
No, I'm excited to follow along. I know it's been an up and down year. Obviously, there's been some moments that are good and bad, but I know they're going to go on a great run here, and hopefully we can keep it from some guys getting suspended here going in. It was fun to watch at the moment, but I know they're going to need all the boys there at the end. So no, congrats, Shafe. Good luck, and I'm really excited to follow along.
Yeah, before we go to Joe Newendike, Coach Schafer, I just want to say this. I competed against you. I coached against you. And I watched my son play against your teams. And I always knew, no matter what, the teams that he played for, that I worked for, or we always had to be really good because the level of compete that you always brought to the game. And I always admired that about you. And I want to thank you for everything you've done for not just the ECAC, but for so many different players at all levels. It means a lot, and you've had a remarkable career, Mike. I really mean that. And I worked for a great guy at St. Lawrence by the name of Joe Marsh, and there are a lot of similarities between you and Joe, and that's the highest praise I can give you because I think so much of Joe Marsh. So congratulations on what's been an amazing career, Mike. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate it, Pierre. Thank you. Joe
Newendike, wrap it up for us.
Yeah, just a couple things come to mind as I'm sitting on this call. And Brecky's on there and Benny. In the NHL, when successful programs, as you know, Pierre, a lot of assistant coaches get pickpocketed on successful teams. Head coaches move those guys along. And Shafe's done that over the years with a couple of guys that are on the call, and there are many other ones as well. And I think that's a tribute to Schafe, how well he's run this program for 3 decades, that people are interested and want to acquire people that have worked in that organization. So that comes to mind. The other thing I'll say is, with young guys and that I've gotten to know in years and years and actually decades of Cornell hockey players, I run into their parents on the road in my hockey circles when I was playing and when I was working. And they all say to a parent that, how proud they are of their kids because they dropped them off as a young boy and they came out a man at the end of 4 years. And I think a lot about that too with Shafe. And the only other thing I'll add is that I think, it's going to be an emotional weekend. I know Shafe holds a lot inside, but he's going to wear his heart on his sleeve. I think the only people that are probably happy that Shafe is retiring is the collective group of ECAC hockey referees. They're probably having a drink somewhere, a little cocktail, and what an amazing run for 3 decades.
Joe, that is so eloquently said. Thank you so much for sharing. Mike, do you want to say anything to the great fans of Cornell? You want to say?
I've already been hired as a consultant next year as a ECAC hockey observer. So they want me to throw in my 2 cents to that, but. No, these guys represent what's all been great about my career. Great teammates, just great colleagues, and great players that have been here, that have played here, and have gone on to have success. So, as Morgan said, not all the guys that come here have great athletic success. But one thing I have never had one regret in 30 years at Cornell, and that's ever bringing a player here, ever. Whether it's worked out, whether at Morgan's level, or whether it's been a real struggle for them. I do know that their relationships with the guys and their team, what the Cornell education has done for them, is just something that you can't imagine unless you're here. So those guys around here, Morgan, Joe, obviously Benny and Brett, thank you so much for all you've done for me over the years. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Saturday. Benny, good luck this weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Morgan, you look good. Nice little break here for you. You get right back at it, but good luck for the rest of your stretch drive. And Pierre, thanks for having me on. And this was a surprise, so really appreciate it. It's been a really nice touch, and I don't know what to say, but thanks.
Well, we all say thank you to you and Joe Newendike and Coach Sire, Coach Brecky, Morgan. Thank you so much to all 4 of you for joining us. It's been a fantastic walk down memory lane for Mike Schafer. Thanks for being part of another edition of ECAC Hockey Decision Makers.